I will be asking the Department of Justice Inspector General to look into this MAGA DOJ's Fulton County election documents seizure. It's plenty suspicious. First, a Missouri U.S. attorney was used to get the warrant for a Georgia search. Usually, in a multi-state matter, the lead U.S. attorney still goes to the local U.S. attorney for the local warrant. Not here. Then, the Atlanta FBI field office chief was forced out days before the search. That's all strange, and it all opens multiple avenues for a defendant to challenge. It's also worth mentioning that this Missouri U.S. attorney met multiple times with election deniers Ed Martin and Kurt Olson since last fall. Weirder still, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and a senior FBI official both attended this search. That's doubly strange. Strange that they would attend. Never happened before in this country that the DNI attended a search, as far as anyone knows. And strange that they'd make themselves witnesses. As U.S. Attorney and as Rhode Island's Attorney General, I avoided attending searches, specifically to avoid being a witness, whom a defendant could call. Prosecution 101. By being present, these senior officials made themselves subject to inquiry by a defendant. Dumb. Worse, Tulsi Gabbard also runs the secretive Trump Weaponization Working Group. By attending this search, she opened an avenue for a defendant to inquire into that semi-covert Trump political operation, which works usually below the radar across multiple agencies. So why expose that so-called working group to a defendant's inquiries? Well, one obvious answer is that they never planned that there'd be a defendant to challenge what they did. They just wanted to seize the election documents, not pursue a criminal case. But that's a problem, because to get a search warrant, you have to provide an affidavit swearing that this is to pursue criminal charges. So we looked at the affidavit. The FBI affidavit cites an array of anonymous witnesses, but it describes them well enough for us to figure out who they are. And who they are is multiple participants in the 2020 Georgia election denial plot. The affidavit does not fully describe their election denial roles or their interactions with each other in the Georgia election denial conspiracy, or the adverse findings that courts and other independent bodies made against their crackpot election denial conspiracy theories. Well, that's all trouble, because it goes to the witness's credibility. If, of course, a defendant gets his hands on that affidavit, but only if there's a defendant. And weirdly, the agent who signed the affidavit said in the affidavit, basically, hey, maybe there's no case here. I've done a lot of warrants, and I've never seen escape hatch language like that in an affidavit, ever. Another weird sign, something for a defendant to pursue. So the big lie in the affidavit may be something so basic to search warrant affidavits that it's virtually never even challenged. The affirmation that the evidence is sought as part of a criminal prosecution. Is there evidence that this supposed criminal investigation was just a pretext? Well, yes, there is. First, we know that the MAGA DOJ had for months been trying to get access to these documents through regular civil proceedings and had repeatedly failed. So maybe raising the stakes with a fake criminal case was their last desperate shot. But DOJ wouldn't do that, would they? Well, actually, a guy involved in this case, Ed Martin, of the DOJ Weaponization Working Group, has already done exactly that. As interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, he pursued a seizure of climate grant dollars with a fake criminal investigation into alleged fraud that was later disavowed by DOJ's own lawyers in open court. So, Fulton County, here you have a warrant affidavit with huge holes in it, omitting the full election denial connections of its gang of witnesses, and a weird maybe there's no case here statement. You have a warrant procedure that breaks the protocols for multi-state investigations with a potentially telling departure of the local FBI special agent in charge. And you have these weird characters showing up at the search scene and making themselves witnesses. And you have a history with fake criminal investigations. All of that creates a field day for any ultimate defendant and huge vulnerabilities for the government in any later criminal case. So here's the question. Is this the most incompetent group of prosecutors in Department of Justice history, opening up all these vulnerabilities? Or is it worse? Is it deliberate rule breaking? Because they all knew, going in, there would never be a defendant to call them out. All they wanted was the documents for election manipulation mischief in the upcoming Georgia elections by Trump's election monkey wrenchers. And if it took a fake criminal investigation to get their hands on those documents, well, that was what they'd have to do. I don't know about you, but I think all that mess merits looking into.